Hit record. Let's do it. And
What could
Debbie
go wrong?
O'Brien, right? I just want to make
Yeah.
sure I'm pronouncing your full name correctly. Like, even if it's like a common name, it's like people pronounce their names differently. So
Yeah.
always good to ask.
Hello, YouTube. I think, maybe. Can you hear this?
Ahoy, hoy!
Okay. We have a little intro that we'll play to kind of get going, and then,
Yes.
well,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not logged in as
Oh, yeah,
admin, so I'm assuming.
okay. We are on YouTube.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, I had double audio coming in. So, yeah, you want me to go ahead and play it, Amal, and then you can take it away for intro?
Yeah. I want to make sure that my audio, as long as it's you guys, y'all can hear me, and we're fine.
Yep.
So we're ready to roll.
Alrighty. All right, here we go.
Hello, James Party listeners. Today I've got a very special show. We've got Nick Nisi on the show with me today. Hello, Nick.
Hoy, hoy. How's it going, Amal?
It's going. I'm in Mexico, and so I apologize for any audio awkwardness, team. So my workmates. So sorry for any audio awkwardness. You are really my team, just like an extended JF. Right, but so apologize for that. But we've got Debbie O'Brien on the show with us today. Welcome, Debbie. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for finally coming on. I shouldn't say finally, but I feel like we've wanted to have a show about Playwright, and it's our heads forever. And then we finally got our act together enough to come on the show. So thank you for coming. So Debbie, I already spilled about Playwright. I guess that's what the show today is about. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, yeah, my name is Debbie O'Brien. I'm Irish, but I live in Mallorca, and I work for Microsoft as a senior program manager with a focus on advocating for Playwright. So, basically, helping to build a community, making sure that everybody in the world knows about Playwright and loves Playwright and gets to use it, and basically just, build that community up. So, that's what I'm basically involved in. I don't know how much more you want to know about me. I go running around the island of Mallorca and cycling and spend 3 hours a day doing sport and, you know.
I want to ask you a really, please don't judge me question, which is where is
Go for it.
Mallorca? And where's Mallorca?
Yeah.
And then what was life before Microsoft? How did you end up?
Sure. So Mallorca is a very small island. If you've heard of Barcelona in Spain, you just go across the water. Many people have heard of Ibiza. Ibiza is the smaller island of the Balearic Islands. So yeah, it's I could basically cycle around the island in a day, be a good couple of 100 kilometers, but I've done it. Yeah. So before Microsoft, I was working a lot with open source. I worked at a company previously called Bit. It's a company about components. And before that, I was working at Nuxt. You might have heard of Nuxt, as in the meta framework on top of Vue. And then before that, I was working at agencies and other kind of small companies here on the island of Mallorca, mainly in the hotel industry, because that's kind of what this island has, right? It's all tourism. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, very involved in the front end. When I worked at the agencies, for example, my mission was to create really good websites for hotel chains and try and make sure there was great performance, add testing, teach their developers, how to have better code. So I was constantly fighting for developers to do testing, right? And then I always had managers saying, "No, we have no money. We're not. Just remove the testing, and we'll sell it at this price, and we don't need to do testing." And I'm like, So yeah, very frustrating. So it's nice to actually work now in Playwright and enforce testing in the world.
Yeah, you're amongst your people, So
yeah, but it's about making testing easier, right?
Yes, yeah, now you're not only amongst your people, you're actually part of helping shape that story for your developers, right? Who are your customers in this case.
Yeah.
So first of all, Playwright is like kind of, I feel like it's, you know, 60 and the Beatles have come out with, I don't know, or third album, and it just feels like
I wasn't
Microsoft
alive
keeps
then.
coming- Well, yeah, I know, but I don't know. It's like one hit after another in terms of source projects that are gaining a ton of adoption. I was just looking at the GitHub page this morning. Like, stars. That's huge. 44.
And we want more. So keep, if you haven't starred us, star us, because we love stars. We live by stars. If we don't get stars, we don't get paid. So make sure you give us stars.
They get paid in
We get paid in stars, yes.
Well, I think she might have frozen.
Oh, she's back.
Yeah, sorry. Connectivity. Okay. We get paid in stars. Ha ha ha. That's all I heard. And then you guys cut off. Okay. Pick this back up. So besides getting paid in stars, what is Playwright? Can you tell us in your own words, and for some of our listeners who may have, not been familiar with this project.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, never heard of it.
Sure, yeah. So everyone should have heard of Playwright. If not, then, you're not following me. No, seriously. So Playwright is about getting end-to-end testing, automated end-to-end testing on the browser. So you have a website, for example, and I don't know if you ever worked in the front-end world where you manually tested your application, as in you opened up a form and you manually filled out that form, pressed the send button, and then you saw there was an error and you went and fixed it, and then you manually went back and started doing it again and found another error. And this is time consuming, right?
Is there
so
any
automated
other way to test?
There wasn't at the time, but
like,
now...
why are you encroaching in my job? Okay. Hashtag job security.
No, but it's but it is actually like I live very much on the edge of technology, right? And I live in the world that not everyone lives in, which is I do everything that's like out there, that's new and shiny, but not everyone is. And I spoke to developers at conferences who are still manually testing their application, who are still manually filling in that form. And we need to stop and let those people have a better life, because they don't realize that there is an alternative and it's going to make their life easier. So by automating your tests, basically you write that test, and then every time you run that test, the Playwright or the test is going to actually fill everything in for you, so you don't have to manually do it. And computers are much faster than us at the end of the day, right? So it's going to get done so much faster, and then you're going to find out that error, you're able to fix it, and then take your whole application, a massive application. It's impossible for you to manually test your whole application, right? So automating your tests, that's basically what Playwright is about. You do that, writing tests is going to be easier, testing your application is going to be easier. And I think for me personally, it's about trying to get developers to write tests, because there's a big thing, right? We hate tests. We don't want to do tests. We don't have time to test. And trying to get that stigma away and change the culture so that actually people do tests as part of their development phase, because then you can walk away on a Friday happy with your code, knowing, you know what, my code is good because I tested and I know it's good, and I can spend my weekends feeling good knowing on Monday I'm not going to have any problems.
Dream.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And first of all, I have like a different understanding of the name. Thank you for helping me kind of see the light on that. It's the Playwright. I get it. It's like
the person who writes the play.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Exactly. And your play being like your application. I don't know if there's a pun that I'm looking for, or that I'm maybe looking too hard for.
I always assumed that the name Playwright kind of came from its origin, like Playwright itself and its origin, which does have some history with another project, right, called Puppeteer. Is that kind of a play on that project?
It is as well, yeah. So basically, Puppeteer, like the puppet master, right? Who,
Yeah.
makes the puppets
Yeah.
do all the work. And then Playwright started as a fork of Puppeteer. But the creator of Puppeteer is working on Playwright, right? So that fork then went to a completely different direction. Like all forks in the road, they are very close together and then they just go completely different, right? So then Playwright is the person who writes the plays, and the play uses the puppet master to do so it's kind of like we're above on top of that, like putting it all together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so
I
I
have to ask because I know our listeners are also curious about the. We this project was forked from. So what was the kind of what was the driving factor for that, or versus being the same open source project? Because I think one of the things we hear often about the benefit is you can carry your resume around with you, right? And kind of continue to work on stuff regardless of where you're working. So was it just was it certain features and like we want to take the project? Was that kind of the driving factor?
Yeah, I don't have all the details because I wasn't part of the team at the time. But at the time, the team were in Google working on Puppeteer, and Puppeteer was open sourced. But Puppeteer was made for what Puppeteer was made for, right? And Microsoft wanted to invest in testing, and they needed a team to help build something because we have a problem in the industry when it comes to testing. We don't have a lot of amazing solutions out there. So it made sense to find amazing people who already have experience in automation, right? But now you've got to start with something. So you start with a fork of Puppeteer, but Puppeteer wasn't made for testing, right? So that's why it has some problems if you're going to do testing, right? But because the person who created Puppeteer is working on Playwright, you take that fork, the code, it's your code, you built it, so it's easy to modify it, to do what you want it to do, to build on it, which is how Playwright has grown so fast, because it has that, a solid
Strong
base
core.
and a very strong team as well that have been working together already for many years, and were able to, build Playwright to do exactly what it was required to do, which is, automated testing, browser testing.
No, that's like super neat. And so like what do you see as like the unique value props that brings to the table? Like what is it uniquely bringing to the table where it kind of shines, in your opinion?
I think there's so much, and that's the kind of cool thing, right? So first of all, very simply, you've got being able to test across multiple browsers. So even if you're on a Windows computer, you can test Safari, right? It'll just run all your tests on any of those. Also emulating your mobile devices. It's not the same as a mobile device, but it's a very good emulation. So you can now test against, mobile Safari, etc. Then you've got tests running in parallel, which means it's super fast. And we don't have time, right? We want to get things done. We want our tests to just run super fast. If you run them all in parallel, obviously it's going to run much faster, because that means, they're all running when they're ready to run. It's like, I'm not even explaining that really very well, but it doesn't have to wait for the other one to finish.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you don't have to like have that coffee break for 20 minutes and wait for the test to pass and then come back, right?
That's really cool. I didn't actually know that or I didn't realize maybe that it ran things in parallel, or that it could. I've used Playwright before for testing, and I never really I always used it in headless mode, so I never really, I guess, acknowledged that, but it probably was. Yeah. If you do it in non-headless mode or in headed mode, I guess, does it just pop up several windows and kind of show you everything happening all at once?
Yeah, but I would say the best way to really kind of see it in action is to use the VS Code extension. And if you open the example to-do app that comes with it, so that's got a load of tests in the one file, and you'll see it kind of start maybe on test 1, and then you'll see maybe test 6 will run, and then test 3 will run, and it's all in different kind of orders, and it's just like going really fast, as opposed to going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to see it, because you can actually like go, oh, I can see what's going on, right?
Talk about having something that forces your tests to not reuse state and forcing them to be sandboxed. I think that the first project in the JavaScript community to do that type of tests run in was Ava. That was kind of a headless project that also ran in Node. not all the cool, not a cool browser testing tool, but it does run in a Node environment. And I remember, like, when teams were switching from Mocha to, not only did they get the speed gains, but all of a sudden a bunch of new flaky tests appeared out of nowhere. And it was because their tests weren't sandboxed and they were kind of relying on this. So the fact that, like, cool to parallelize and force that kind of sandboxing, but cool problem to solve for browser tests, because I think that's like a very unique feature, having in order to run things, you need to have a bunch of very fancy setup in your CI, and it just feels like Playwright kind of smoothed it over.
I'm going
kind of made this turn
jump in here and say the word test isolation, because that's exactly what so isolating your tests means that, like,
describing
it's kind of like you're trying to get the word out, right? So it's basically like, how would I'd explain it is, if you think of an incognito browser window, right? When you open that incognito window, you get no links are kind of coming over from a previous window, right? Everything is fresh, everything is new, and that's kind of basically how you can imagine it, right? So everything is isolated, which means that when you run those tests, nothing leaks, no state leaks from one test to the other, which makes your test less flaky. You don't have to clean up after the test, because a new browser, new test isolation, new browser context is created every time you're running your test. And it's super cheap to do it. It's not like this is a really expensive process, right? So, which is how it's made really fast. But yeah, it means if you want to share something across a lot of tests, you can do that with fixtures, and page object model is another one, for example, that people know of. But say fixtures, which is what we recommend, then you can kind of, say, right, use state in this tree tests, right? But it's using it each time, as opposed to, okay, here's my test, and I want you to use test A's. No, test A and test B are two different tests running completely different and don't talk to each other ever.
Right. Yeah, and I love that, because state is like the hugest. Did I just make up a word? It is the hugest source of test flakiness, right? In general, like state issues in your tests, they just cause flake, and there's lots of different kinds of state. You thinking the DOM is ready when it's not, or you thinking.
Yes.
You see, and that's where auto waiting comes in.
I know. Tell us about auto waiting, Debbie.
Yeah, so Playwright will auto wait for something to be ready on the DOM, so you don't have to think or calculate. This needs 3 seconds to be able to be clickable, right? Playwright is just going to wait. It's going to do all that for you. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, obviously, if you have something that's going to take 10 seconds to be clickable, then you have a problem in your code, and Playwright test is not going to wait that long, and it's going to say, exactly. So now it's time to fix your code, not your test, right? But you could manually put a timeout if you felt you need it for whatever reason until the code maybe is fixed. You could do that. But in general, Playwright will wait for everything. You don't have to set timeouts. It gets done for you. And that makes it really easy, because you just have to concentrate on writing a test and not having to think about all the setup.
This is encroaching on my trademark sleep method that I add to every test suite.
Nick's like, if I ain't sleeping, it ain't sleeping.
No, this is really great, and there's a lot of cool things. One thing I wanted to ask about, though, because I was kind of fibbing when I said that a manual test is the only way to go, or the only way I've gone. I'm actually
I couldn't tell you were fibbing,
school.
Nick.
I know. I'm somewhat old school.
Dear Nick, letter that I'm writing to you. Dear Nick.
I'm somewhat old school in that I have been around long enough that I was using other tools like this that were specifically like using, I think it was called Selenium, but I think a WebDriver was the underlying like API or whatever. And I'm curious, is Playwright built on top of that legacy, or is it kind of doing something different to orchestrate these browsers?
It's doing something different. It's using the Chrome protocol. I don't know too much about it. I couldn't go too deep into that. But yeah, it's not using WebDriver. It's using the Chrome protocol instead.
Okay.
If you know about those, you'll know the difference. And
I don't. So
Yeah.
it's okay. Like it does support more than just Chromium browsers too. That's an important thing to
Exactly. So, like all browsers, WebKit, Chromium, um, and even Opera, etc. So you can it can run on all browsers, which is
Yeah.
basically what you want to do. So yeah, it uses the Chrome protocol to be able to do that, if that makes sense.
Coming from that legacy and hearing that it doesn't use Selenium is like a breath of fresh air. It's like, wow, it might actually be stable and work really well.
Yeah, no, you can't like use no, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're into all this other good stuff with features, and I'm super eager to kind of bombshell that, which is like multi-browser support. We can't open that can of worms without going deep, so I'm gonna just leave that for the second segment. Everyone. Okay. So first of all, awesome first segment. And, I think kind of I don't want to get into the multi-browser thing without like giving it due like the justice and time that it deserves. That would be a good place to kick off the second segment, and we can just keep talking about features, Debbie. So
there's a lot of features I can go into.
I know. I prioritize real quick. So I think multi-browser is the first one that I obviously would love to get into. And the weights and the weighting stuff. Like, I'd love to. Oh, for me anyway. Like while reading the docs, like I felt like Playwright just solving a lot of common pain that most teams have when writing automate. And so it feels a little more batteries included. And so I'd love to kind of maybe that's a good segue to say like what are your favorite, like what do you think some of those are besides multi-browser, and then you can pick. You take us on the adventure, and we're here for the ride. Like do you want to say something? Yes.
Just go with the flow.
Oh, just go with the flow.
One thing.
Okay.
One thing, if we have time, I'd like to touch on briefly, and Debbie, you can tell me if this is a good like place to go, is like the non-test use cases for Playwright. I don't know. I'm thinking like
no, you're
I've
talking
seen, like,
scraping and things like that, but
scraping, but also like I think I've seen like tutorials on like open graph image auto creation, like using a screenshot. Like you like go to the site and take a screenshot and then use that as the open graph image and things like that. I guess those are two examples, but I don't know if there's anything beyond that.
I wouldn't
Or
be
if you
able
wanna
to
stick
go
more
too
to
deep into
testing.
it because it's also using the Playwright library and not the Playwright test runner. So then you lose all the benefits of Playwright and you end up having to build on top of it to get auto weighting and get all these things.
Got it.
So it's
Okay.
kind of like yeah, you can do it, but now you're going to have more problems, and everything I talked about is not actually going to help you, if you know what I mean. It's not,
Yep.
you're not going to
Okay.
get the benefits of it. So
Okay.
I mean, if people want to scrape, they can scrape, totally cool, but it's not what we have built Playwright for, and it's not where we're investing the time into it. So
Sure.
it's kind of like, yeah, you can do that,
Okay.
but then go figure out all the problems yourself when you have those problems of, you know.
Yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
Debbie, you just said something. You said Playwright Engine versus Playwright Runner. Is that what you just said? You said
No, I said Playwright library versus the Playwright test runner. So
I see.
because Playwright started off as a library, and then you could use Jest on top of it as a test runner.
I see.
But then everything changed, I don't know, more than a year ago or a year and a half ago, I think. And all the kind of, everything is being put into the test runner so that you don't have to use any other test runner, because now we have control, we can make it better, we can improve it. Whereas if you're using a third party, you know, then you're stuck with limitations. So
I see. Yeah,
this is
that
why we
makes sense.
recommend using the test runner, not using Playwright plus another external one.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually didn't realize you had released those two things separately. That's an interesting like evolution, but so yeah. So I think we can stick with features. We'll have time to group up the second segment. Start with multi-browser. The next thing is like whatever you want to think. The docs in the meantime as well to kind of pick my favorite ones. But all right, so ready to go? Nick, you want to kick us off in the second segment?
Sure.
Okay.
So Debbie, you mentioned that Playwright supports multiple browsers. I thought that'd be a good place to to dive right in the new segment. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I guess you could say very, very easily say you're using in your config file, right, in Playwright, you can literally just, it's actually like there, you just have to uncomment out the other browsers, right? And if you're using the VS Code extension, which I haven't even told you about, but from the VS Code extension, it asks you which browsers you want to install, and you just select the browsers. Playwright will then install those browsers for you. So you don't even have to have these browsers like on your computer, right?
Nice.
You've now got these browsers, and Playwright will run the tests on all those browsers that you have decided you want to run them on. So if you're having problems on, let's just say Safari, because, sometimes people have problems with Safari. That means that when you go to production, without having to do any extra work, your test is going to run across all those browsers, and you're going to find those Safari bugs before you go to production. You're going to be able to fix it. It could be a tiny little CSS issue, normally is a CSS issue, and then you fix that and it's going to work in Safari and all your users are going to be happy, right? So yeah, as well as, mobile, you can test across mobile responsiveness, make sure everything works on, those emulated devices as well. So just being able to spin up any browser without any effort, without actually doing anything, without opening another, website or tool, you just literally, it just works. It just does it. It's just easy.
Does it support like branching within those browsers? So like if I'm writing a test on some specific feature, let's take Riverside for example, because this is the app we're using to record this podcast. And if I were to run the test across all browsers, when I get to probably 99% of the tests in Safari, it would pop up a message that says this works best in Chrome or Edge, or like, some message like that.
Yeah.
And so like, is there like a way to be like in Safari or skip these tests if Safari or something like that?
So there actually is, believe it or not.
Nice.
So for example, say, I'm going to give you an easier example so you can kind of picture it, and a lot of people, users can picture this. You take navigation, you want to test the navigation menu of your website, right? And then you want to test it on a mobile device. The mobile device has a hamburger menu on most websites. So now it's a little bit different. The user experience is different because what does the user have to do? They have to click this hamburger menu and then they can click the about page. Then on the about page, they want to go to the menu again. They have to click the hamburger menu again, and then they click the features or whatever page they want to go to next, right?
Yeah.
So when you write that test, previously you might have written two tests, right? One and say, use mobile, and the other use kind of desktop kind of thing. But you don't need to do that. You can write one test and you can use the is mobile, right? So you can say you just pass it in as in, when you're writing a test, you'll have a page. You can write in page and then comma is mobile. And then you put that in. If it's mobile, click hamburger menu, and then you'll go on to the next whatever it is, click on the about page, and then if it's mobile again, click hamburger, and then click on the features page, and you can do that with kind of other things as well. So once we kind of know what you're using, what device, what etc., then you can kind of test it in. So I've never done the if it's Safari, but I'm almost sure you can do that because you can do is mobile. So I'm imagining you can do the same thing there. So that's what I would suggest to do.
And you have full access to the entire browser, right? Or to like the JavaScript global namespace for that instance, right?
Agent.
So you could probably check something. Yeah, exactly. You can check the user agent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
So just so I understand this, there's still limitations for Alexa. For example, if you're on a Windows computer, would you still be able to launch a Safari? I guess I don't know. This is a question.
Of course you can.
So
Yeah. So if you're on a Win, it's
What?
Of course you
just
can.
blew me away.
Please explain this black magic, Debbie.
I mean, Playwright installs those browsers for you. So it spins up an instance of those browsers. So it's got everything it needs. I mean, think about it. Your tests need to run on CI, right? So how are they going to run in CI? So you're able to run up in like headless mode on CI. So you're able to run any browser from anywhere. So it doesn't matter what system you're using. You can spin up a Safari browser and run the tests across Safari and any other browser not just Safari has the problems.
Wow. What about
I
yeah.
didn't even think of that, but
yeah.
Yeah, so
I know,
Edge runs on
mind blown, right,
Chromium.
Nick?
So it's so Edge and Chrome both run on Chromium, and Safari runs on WebKit. So it's running up an instance of WebKit, which is, you know, the Safari browser.
yeah.
Yeah.
The engine,
I guess I
basically, that is used.
remember old Edge, non-Edge HTML, like it was Edge HTML. Now I'm getting confused, but the version of Edge before it was Chromium. Like, you ever be able to? I mean, granted, like I think that whole browser is more at this point, but I mean, I'm sure it's still in use. And so, would you be able to test on a or an IE? Is that possible? Specifically, strictly for modern browsers.
I have no idea. I've never had to deal with that problem.
I'm jealous. Yeah.
We just dropped support for IE11 in June when IE11 officially died, and so
Yes, no, it's strictly modern, which makes sense, right?
Let's not resurrect the dead.
yeah.
But you'd be surprised. Government people have just had to support governments. Believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
This is still a little wider. But that being said, so this is a really powerful kind of superpower because, being able to easily test across, multiple browsers, and having kind of that parallelization kind of turnkey out of the box, like that's really solving a huge pain point for developers to be. It's exciting.
Yeah.
And
you don't have to have those browsers downloaded on your computer and stuff, right? So like say Firefox, and there's nothing against Firefox. I just don't use it. It's amazing, but I don't use it, right? So I don't have Firefox, but I test across Firefox, and I have no Firefox on my machine at all. So it's kind of cool. You don't have to I'm going to download all these browsers and then open each one and then,
Yeah.
Right, but
and this is a really good.
What is your? Yeah. I'm sorry. So what's your for if you have you don't, but it's you have Firefox being tested through Playwright and you have an issue with Firefox. So at that point, do you have to go? Or can you use the instance that Playwright creates to debug?
Yeah, you don't need to download that browser on your computer to be able to debug because you don't need to. You can debug straight in the actual, browser. That's, there's a couple of ways of debugging. So I use the VS Code extension, which is absolutely amazing. So from the VS Code extension, I can actually debug that test. I can open that test and I can set a breakpoint in VS Code itself. And then I can step through it and I can see what's going on, where the error is, and then debug it right there and then. Maybe fix that code, whatever it is, small CSS issue it could be or whatever, or JavaScript undefined, something, I don't know, fix it and then rerun that test again, open it up. It'll, show me if I want to, I can press show browser so I can visually see it, open up Firefox and I can say I only want to debug in Firefox because maybe it's passing on the others. So I don't want to waste time running the others. I'm focusing on this one. So I'll say only Firefox, let's run debug mode and let's debug that. Okay, then that works. And then I can rerun all the tests in all browsers again to double make sure. But as you're running it with show browser, you can see the different browsers coming up and the difference between WebKit, Chromium and Firefox. You can visually see it and you know which one is that you're watching going through it. But yeah, you can also use the terminal and you can use the debug commands as well if you don't want to use the VS Code extension for whatever reason. Maybe you're just a terminal person or or maybe you're using a different editor, right? So there's a couple of different options of debugging. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
And that really highlights a really important point and perk of something like Playwright because I'll tell you, we have a lot of React tests in our app, right? And we're using, for a majority of them, we're using Jest plus React testing library, which is kind of giving us this test from the user's perspective thing. You have a screen object and you can get by ID and all this to find how it's actually rendered. But it's not rendered in a browser. It's rendered with JS DOM. And so it's not a real environment. It's not often, but things do arise that are, not actually happening or happening in JS DOM and not happening in an actual browser. And then when we go to debug it, which is quite often, it's like the only thing that we have is screen.debug, which spits out a bunch of HTML, and it's like, well, figure it out from there. And like, you know, with auto-generated classes and stuff, it's like, what is going on half the time? Whereas like Playwright gives you this amazing ability to test in the actual environments, and when things go wrong and you need to like, be like, why isn't I'm trying to click this button? Well, you can spin it up in that instance, like actually see it run, and immediately see that button's disabled. That's why it's not clicking, or something like that. Like, it's just so easy and so much more practical to do that. So it's a big benefit of like why we're looking at moving over to this, because that would just save so much time.
Yeah, and you're talking about a real click as opposed to an emulated click, right?
Exactly.
And that's a little bit different to actually a real click happening and a kind of fake environmental kind of emulated click, right?
Yeah.
So they can behave a little bit different.
Precisely.
But one thing you also mentioned there was testing library, right?
Uh-huh.
And I know there's a lot of people out there big fans of testing library. I used to use testing library as well. Did you watch their latest release video where we worked with Kent C. Dodds to bring in testing library inspired API so that we can have that same kind of testing library feel of get by role, get by test ID, get by head, get by title, get by alt, etc.
No, I did not know.
There
this.
you go.
That makes
Well, I'm
A little easier. Yeah, this is
I was just gonna say it makes converting so much easier.
Yeah, this is like,
I know.
it's like an infomercial for libraries, you know, and
Yeah.
like this is like, did you know? No, I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Infomercial continuing.
here. First of all, I'm just kind of,
That was
Words that
genuine
you
though.
just said, Debbie.
it was of course. All of this is genuine. No, Debbie, hold on. Did you just say? Did you watch the video of the release? I'm like, damn, like open source
Videos now when they're really
that's like taking it to another level.
Playwright is, of course it is. Yes,
Okay.
every month we create a video every single month. There's a release every month, and we'll create a video and show you the new features and everything that's new. So
That's
if
cool.
you're trying to like keep up of the changes, you can just watch the short video. We do try and keep it short, and the guys will go through it and tell you like this is what's changed, this is what's new, this is what we recommend, this is the best practice. And then you can just watch that and then you go, oh my God, I need to change my code, I need to do this. Or, oh, that's a really cool feature I didn't know I could use, now I can use it. Or maybe there's nothing new that you particularly, are interested in. But like there's a ton of features all the time. So it's kind of really cool to watch those videos and keep up to date with the changes. Because the latest changes, like the testing library inspired API, this is going to help you write better code because now you're accessibility first. And Playwright is going to, and we haven't even gone into the other tools that I'll mention in a second, which is like the generator and the VS Code extension for choosing the right locator. So if you don't know which locator to use because you're new to testing and you're like, what do I use? Do I use like, get by what? Get by role, get by heading, get by test ID, what do I use, right? So the selector is going to pick it for you. So you just have to click and hover over the page and it's going to take that and it's going to give it to you, and okay, this is a get by role link and the name is about, and then you copy that into your test, right? Rather than trying to think, oh, I need to write my test and I have no idea what to do. And then if you kind of get one that says get by role, and maybe it's a CSS selector, I don't think even we will give that to you, but say you had that, that's a kind of really bad selector, right? So something is missing in your code. Maybe your code is not accessible. So now you need to improve your code to try and actually, give an accessible role to something so that the code is better. The test is going to now help you write better code. So that's kind of like the cool thing I think about the new changes to the new API that came out in the latest release.
The latest release, and what is that? I guess what's the version?
127. Yeah, 1.27.
1.2.7.
1.27.
Okay, yeah. Okay, 1.27. Okay, sorry. Okay, 1.27. So
yeah.
So that's really cool, and this kind of the multi-browser support, this force
the kind of accessibility.
Making sure that you're like by your code being accessible to the test, it's also accessible to a user. using a screen reading device, right? So that's like incredibly awesome. What else? What are your other, Debbie? Because it seems like from listening to you for the however many minutes, like it really does seem like Playwright has kind of taken some of those very common space when writing browser tests and really how do we kind of smooth over that pain, right? So you mentioned some VS Code and things like. So can you kind of talk about some of your favorite things? I know there's too many to cover in this podcast, but we'll just pick your favorites.
Okay, I want to speak about two, so let's try and I'm going to put it in half, and then you're going to go,
focused.
tell me about the next one, right? So
Yes.
I'm going to stay on the first one, and then when you're ready for the second one, you go, I want the next one now.
All right.
So-
all right. I love it. It's a first in,
And-
first out
and-
too. Okay.
Yeah, but before I even go in the first in and the first out, just remember the VS Code extension is going to make your life a lot easier when you're getting started, because now you're right inside VS Code. You get a little green button with a triangle. You press play, that runs your test for you. So you don't have to open terminal at any stage to write your test, run your test, debug your test. So now the question is, how am I going to write my tests? Yes, exactly. So now the writing of tests, because that's the hard bit, isn't it? It's like I don't know where to start, right? I'm new to testing. I don't know what to do. I don't know which locators, selectors, etc. to use. How do I actually get a test written? And this is where CodeGen comes in. So CodeGen is a test generator. And again, you can use the terminal if you want, and you can just npx playwright CodeGen, or right in the VS Code, you can just click the button that says to record a test. And when you click that button to record a test, it's going to open up in your VS Code, it's going to open up a new test file, and it's already have started the test for you, and it's going to open up a browser window. Now inside that browser window, you can write in the browser whatever page you want to go to, JS Party, and that's going to go to that page. So now we're on that page, and your test has started to visualize that. You can see go to page, etc. Now I want to click on the about link. So I click on the about link, and then it's going to go get by role link name about dot click. That's going to be written for you. And now I'm on the about page, and say maybe I want to test that the heading is there. So, get by role heading, or you can do get by title, for example. No, get by role heading would be the correct one here, sorry. So get by role heading, name, JS party, whatever. And then go down and check each kind of thing. Maybe you want to check that the image is there. You could get by alt text. And you can just click. As you're clicking along, it's going to write that test for you. So you have done no work. You have not written any code. All you've done is be a user, and you have clicked on the page to listen to this podcast, press the play button, and make sure that play button is there, for example. And then you go to your test. Now you've got a full test written, and then you can press play and play back that test, visually see it by clicking on the show browser. And now you can see that that test works. Now, you will have to go and change a little bit of code because you don't have the web first assertions, right? So it's click kind of methods. But say you clicked on, we're going to click on the title, which is get by role heading, name, JS party. So now you kind of want to change that and say expect get by role heading, name, JS party to be visible, right? So that's the little modification now that you need to do, because we at the moment do not generate assertions. We generate user actions like clicks and fill and type and etc., right? But if you do click on it, it's going to go into your code, and then you can just modify it. So it makes it a lot easier, because you don't have to worry about how do I get started?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
It really did. I love that experience as well, because you would think a feature like this, it would be used by people who make, but actually this is assistive to developers that just want to get a foundation that they can modify, right? So you're like, where do I start? How do I structure this test? What's the user flow? Here's a rudimentary version that you can then improve. Like, that's a really cool workflow, especially like, if it's a Friday afternoon and I'm like, 3 hours before the weekend and I gotta write this test, you need a little bit of a push, or a little bit of a cheat, right? But this is like a cheat in a good way.
Yeah, it's like I literally say to people, it's going to take you 5 minutes to install Playwright and write your first test and have it running. And
Yeah.
this is not even me telling you the second feature. This is me just jumping ahead
Oh my
to
God, I
kind of
know, I know.
conclude in that 5 minutes. All right. But you can then run your tests.
Yeah,
You can
no,
then
I-
run your tests on a GitHub Action workflow because that comes out of the box included when you're installing. So now you've got a GitHub Actions workflow running. So you literally just push your code to GitHub, and now on every PR, your test is going to run for you, and you don't have to do anything to set that up. It's just works.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's like the beauty of an integrated platform, you know, is that you can like really see over those like you can preemptively kind of like a better like integration
With all your suite of tools, you know, and
so that's the like
between the
VS Code, GitHub Actions, Playwright, you know, and GitHub itself, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean,
you know, GitHub
And TypeScript because
I'll
it's
get the point.
TypeScript first.
That too, yes. No fiddling with config files. That's awesome. You just said Nick Nisi's buzzwords, so you know, we've pretty much lost him for another 5 minutes. He'll be daydreaming about TypeScript. There'll be so much to get into. I'm excited to hear about the second thing and
More, I'm
Okay.
I've got to ask about Cypress, right?
Our listeners are gonna be like, well, what about Cypress?
We'll have to
Ask you, you know,
what
to kind of what
Playwright
has
has
that Cypress doesn't, so that folks can kind of wrap their head around that a little easier. And yeah, so we'll get into all of that
and more
after these short messages. Bye. Bye for now. Okay, cool. All right, that was
awesome. I'm like,
Can we just keep going?
we can.
So really good. I think we can kind of pick up where we left off to get into your second thing that you were so good on, and then from there, you know, we can. I mean, I feel like there was one question I had that like the page op. You used a different word. You said page something.
The
else.
fixtures, yeah. So we
Fixtures,
recommend
yes.
fixtures rather than page object model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's about like,
Which is
It's
which
not
is what I would
exciting,
expect
though.
too.
It's
yeah.
not exciting. I thought it was.
I wasn't sure if you all were doing with that API because you mentioned earlier there was something about management where you know you recommend using the page model. Some
No,
level of
using
share state.
fixture. So use fixtures
then
instead of
everything
page
else.
object model.
Okay,
Yeah.
You're right.
I agree with you. That's not exciting. So so we'll get into your second thing, and then yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I had two things that I, like, in my usage of Playwright that I thought were super interesting that might be good to bring up, if you think so, Debbie. And that is the thing that I was doing, well, I'll get into it if we talk about it, but it's like some kind of repeated flow, like specifically like I need to log in before I can test this or something like that. Like I'm testing a production page or something and I need
So
to...
that's talking about a fixture.
Is it? Okay. I wasn't sure if it was the same thing. Okay.
So
And then the other piece was... Go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
The other thing was combining with another tool that I use a lot. No, I mean, not specifically another tool, but like using the same functionality. And that is like being able from the browser level, being able to like mock requests or like capture requests and provide mock responses and things like that.
There's API testing, so I'm guessing that's what you mean.
I think so. I was looking at the docs. It was like
Yeah,
request.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of that, so I can't really go deep into it. But there's API
Sure.
testing, sending API requests from UI tests. But it's not something I've spent a lot of time actually doing personally.
Okay.
But it can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay.
is it.
So. Okay. So I think I kind of know why the other thing, but I'd like to kind of bring up. So, just looking through my notes here. Interesting. There was like that experimental section that had Electron. Because one of the questions I personally had was like, okay, if I have an Electron app, I'm assuming use Playwright, but it seems like that it's experimental right now. You even have support is very cool, even if it's experimental. I want to just briefly talk about in terms of the surface area, right? And web view, electron application, like there's so many kind of things that that would be a little bit non-traditional. But like, is there like things going to have support, or are these like communities? It's like I'm curious. Do we know?
I don't even know where you have that in the docs. I know we have the Electron support, but it's not in the docs. I think it's only under API. I think I have to do a search to find that page. Electron.
So, yeah. No worries.
It's
then.
it's
API/class electron class-electron.
Yeah, so it's there, like, it's there, but it's as you said, it's experimental. I don't have much information of how much work is being put into that because it's not even a page in the documentation. It's literally just in our API docs. People are using it and have used it, but I don't know to what extent and how successful they've been or what problems they've had.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. It's very it's a niche support path. So okay.
Yeah.
Question is just around interoperability then, because
this kind of segues into
the Cypress Delta, but you have a test runner, test reporter. Are these things comparable with typical API signatures, like the try assertions, and does it use things like reporter for kind of coverage? Like, I'm just curious, how interoperable is it with other testing tools in the system that already exist? I don't know, like.
I don't think it is.
Playwright? Okay. Then.
Yeah, unless you use you'd have to go down the library path and then you're kind of manually creating yourself stuff.
Okay.
And then you have to maintain whatever you're creating, right? So, it's like, say, I don't know how to explain it, but like the Playwright test runner, it has everything. So now if you want to strip all that back, go back to the library, which is, the basis of it, and take away all that test runner that's built on top of the library, take all that off, and now you've got this very core. But now what are you going to do? Now you've got to do your own parallelism, your own auto-weighting, your own everything. You're going to add in your own libraries, your own assertions, but now you don't have the auto-weight because the auto-weights are built into error assertions. So you're kind of like creating problems as opposed to fixing solutions, no?
Okay, no, that makes sense. Okay, well, I mean, so it's batteries included, kind of like, and it, like it's best practice to kind of use external things because Playwright seems to have something built in for everything that you would need anyway. Is that fair? Like people.
I would say. Yeah, I would say if you're going to use something external, then why do you need it? So like this is when Kenzie Dodds came to us and said, I want to use testing library. Okay, well, how can we make Playwright better so you don't have to put a library on top of the library, right? And that's how we then worked with him to improve the API so that we have a better API that now does things like type checking which is what it was all about, really. The testing library was about type checking, so that when you put get by ROAL instead of ROLE, for example, it's going to know because that doesn't exist. Whereas before you would be able to like write inside it and then you make a mistake and you don't know, and now you're like frustrated at your test because you don't have type checking. So that's where that came about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think maybe we can just briefly mention that. Get to it. Like I'm more just kind of interested in like community of plugins and open source packages and other kind of tools that people use with Playwright. Really, this kitchen sink, everything's included, build upon. Like, I think that's just in terms of trying to wrap my head around where the library. But anyways, we can get started. So, all right.
Okay.
All right. Water break, stretch break, bathroom break, anything? Are we good to?
All good.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, Debbie, that was quite the. left us
with, you know,
you
it was like
we were running through your list of favorite things, and there's too many to cover in this podcast, so we're kind of letting you drive us down.
so let's get back into it.
We talked about multi-browser support. We talked about kind of improved select, kind of decision, good decision making, all new features. Can you tell us about more of your favorite things?
Okay, so let me give you an example, right? So you run your test on continuous integration with GitHub Actions or whatever. I'm saying GitHub Actions, but actually it integrates with everything else. You just have to, add that config file yourself. But GitHub Actions is out of the box, but it runs on every other CI as well. So you're running your test in CI and it fails in CI. It runs locally. It fails in CI. So now you're like stuck. What do you do? What would you do in this instant? How would you fix that test?
I would have to, find the test locally and
Run it.
grab,
But it works locally.
and then, if it works locally.
But it works locally.
I'd have to look at the
Matrix to see which permutation
in CI does it fail, and then how do I reproduce that locally? I don't know.
it's tough.
I would start adding sleeps.
Timeout everywhere. Yeah, that's a good one. So this is this is why my other feature is very cool, and it's called a trace viewer. So you can run the traces automatically run. You're having to set up anything. Traces will run on the second retry. So on the first retry. So when your test runs the first time it fails, Playwright will run it again and say, maybe there was something up there. Let's run it again, see what happens. It fails again. Now it's going to go, okay, I'm going to create a trace for you of your whole test. So now you have this trace. And what is a trace? It's basically a PWA of your whole test, right? And you download this as a zip file. Now you run this PWA. So it's now a little mini application running that you can actually step through. So if you're thinking of the Chrome DevTools, you have the timeline at the top, right? So you got a timeline of your test and you can go through and it shows a little kind of screenshot image of every step of the test, everything that happened with all the events at the top, like in different colors, a click event, a fill event, etc. Then on one side, you have everything, every single event that happened, every click event or every whatever you did in that test. And you can click on each one and now it's going to open in the middle a box, and that box is going to have, it's a DOM snapshot. So now it's not an image snapshot, it's a DOM snapshot of each moment of your test. Now that DOM snapshot, because it's a DOM, it means you can open Chrome DevTools or whatever DevTools you're running, and you can open that up and you can literally see what's going on, see the CSS, and you can actually picture and kind of play around with it and kind of almost fix it, right? But then you also have on the other side the console log, the network requests, plus the actual test file. So you can even see the test code without even having to open up your editor. You could send that to someone and they could literally kind of go through it and say, oh, look, this failed because it's the mobile view is, still it's out of viewport. So the test has failed because the menu is there, but it's out of viewport and it can't be clicked. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But you can visually now see this. And that was kind of like an easy one to kind of see, but you can actually see it. So it's much better. Now you can still record a video if you want to. So people ask us, oh, we want to record videos. Go ahead. If you want to record videos, they're really heavy and they're kind of like, you're just going to play a video. But why not have something that you can interact with and actually open the DevTools and really play around with? Because that's much more better than just a video, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the trace viewer. It runs, as I said, on CI on the first retry, but you could also actually run it locally. So if you are kind of going through something that you can't figure out and you're debugging it and you're getting really frustrated, you can actually put the tag -- trace on, and then when your test fails, you can show the report. You're going to get a full report and you get the trace at the bottom and you click on that trace, and now you can actually open it up and you can walk through and step through your test and see, I see what I was doing wrong. I was testing for this, but I really should have done that or whatever.
That is awesome.
Super cool. Yeah, I was gonna just ask. I'm like, does it do this?
But no, there's
There's a flag that you have to turn on, but that's great.
Yeah, because you only want it if your test
Only when
fails.
you need it. And do you know if the things line up visually so that it shows you that we're
collecting, and here's the
assertions, but and so you know that until you get to these sets of traces where things start to go haywire, do those things line up?
So it'll kind of go through everything, and then it'll say here, Playwright stopped here, and this is where it broke. So this is where to this point. But then you can see what happened and what happened before it to cause that. And maybe it was a network request. So maybe your test failed because the API is down. But you'll see that API request information, and you'll be able to go, we have a problem with the API. Because maybe when you test it locally, it ran, everything worked, the API then dropped, and then you ran it on CI, and then it kind of failed, right? So you'll be able to see in through the console log the network requests, and that's kind of like what makes it powerful. That's something you don't get in a video, right? You don't get that information.
No, you don't.
You've taken the video and kind of inverted it. What we're getting is a video happening underneath. You know, what's happening below the surface of the iceberg, which is really how developers can make an educated guess towards, that's how we come into the picture in terms of fixing it, right? And so I'm kind of mind blown by this because I can see teams build around this where they, have the traces automatically get generated set somewhere and analyzed, and you can even parse the traces if you really want to, and you can build a robust workflow around reporting failures and flakiness. Where I work, where that type of flakiness and reporting is actually a really big deal. We have whole systems that track flake, why they're when they started to fail, and so that's really I don't know. That's if I feel for me that feature alone is worth gold. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and the idea is that you should have less flaky tests, so you should almost never really need this feature because it's literally only gonna be needed if you're really struggling because something went wrong, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so in terms of kind of tests, right? What are there kind of the recommended kind of best practice for CI, right? For teams that have to maintain long tests, is there some setup or config that's recommended, or do you all kind of let teams do whatever they want to do? I'm curious if from your team on that.
I mean, obviously, I will say, use GitHub, use Azure, because, but every team has already got their CI set up with whatever they've got to set up with. So you don't have to leave your CI environment and now change that just because, we will give you GitHub Actions out of the box because, we're integrated with them. It makes sense, right? But we have documentation for the other CI. So you just go to that documentation page and take that configuration example and put it into your configuration of your CI, and then you'll have that running on whatever it is you're using. So there's not really we recommend this, or I'll say, yeah, we recommend GitHub. Of course we do. But we understand that the world is not all on GitHub Actions and GitHub and, or Azure. So it's totally fine. Playwright is open source, so you can use it on whatever
can still exist.
You want.
Just kidding.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And so I bring up the elephant in the room, but we didn't want to make this show about how it's not Cypress, right? We so we're at the. So I kind of want to ask, just if you can kind of give us a highlight of summary highlight of how Playwright is different than for many folks like myself, who I've been a long-time Cypress user. It's a tool that I know is a tool that I've used at multiple companies, et cetera. And so it's the kind of, folks who are curious about Playwright. Why should they be more curious? And more specifically, what does Playwright have that'll make things easier for users?
Okay, so yeah, Cypress is great. I used to use Cypress for many years, so I come from that world as well. we are newer, so therefore the community is smaller, which is my job to grow the community. So Playwright's been around for about 2.5 years now. So obviously, like, we do not have as much, workshops out there and, examples and videos and stuff, which we are working on. We will have. And thanks to our ambassador page, you'll be able to find kind of more content there if that's what you're looking for. When it comes to kind of differences, I guess like browser support. Now I know that Cypress has recently added WebKit support because they're using the Playwright WebKit to be able to get that. So they're kind of a little bit on par, I guess, when it comes to the browser testing, thanks to our open source work, of course. And then there's other things like multi-language, right? So this is something that I think is very important if you're working with a team of many developers who work in different languages. So you can use Playwright in, JavaScript, TypeScript, or you can use Playwright in .NET, or you can use Playwright in Java or in Python. So you now have a team, and maybe Nick, you're a Python developer, and Amal, you're a C# developer, and I'm TypeScript. So now we have different applications because companies have different applications, and you want to write the test and the code that you're comfortable with. So you write your test. We all write different tests in all different languages, but we have the same library, the same API, everything works the same. So if I read your test, I would understand it. Just the syntax is a little different. So I might struggle kind of, writing certain syntax, but I could read your test and understand it. You could read my test, Nick, and understand it. And I think that makes it really important that you have one workflow, one way of doing things, one library that people you just have to learn
Across the
Playwright,
stack.
and now you can work exactly. And having that is, rather than one on one, another, I know you've got all these problems, and the front end is doing this, and the back end developers are doing that, and it's like a mess. So that's the first thing I would say is I think really important is the multi-language support. Another thing that Playwright does really, really well that I know other frameworks have struggled with is being able to test across multiple domains. So imagine a chat application that opens up 2 browser windows, and you need to be able to write in the chat and then go to the next window and answer back and you can actually do that in Playwright. Just works. You don't have to set up anything. It just works. Another thing is iframes, right? If you want to test an iframe, maybe there's a YouTube video on your website you want to test, for example, or whatever iframe. Netflix has a chat application in theirs, which is set up through an iframe, right? You want to be able to go into that iframe and test that. That just works. You don't have to do anything. It just uses the frame locator instead of the page locator. So yeah, that basically works out of the box. And then obviously parallelism for free, so you don't have to pay for anything. It just works, which means your tests run a lot faster. I know some charge you for parallelism. That's why I say free, because you don't have to pay. Some make you pay. And then let me think, obviously the trace viewer, the tooling around it, which kind of just means, if you're using kind of things like, say, VS Code, that all the integration that goes on, makes a very good developer experience. But then you got the trace viewer for when you're kind of having, problems and trying to debug, etc. And I don't even know any of there could be other differences out there, but I would say maybe if you're having problems testing across multiple domains, testing across iframes, if your tests are running slow, or if you have flaky tests because of test cleanup, etc., then Playwright's just solved all those problems for you. Because it just works, right? I like to say Playwright just works. You don't have to do anything. Yeah. It just works.
Yeah,
That's really great.
And that was a really great summary and rundown, Debbie. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
I have to do just disclaimer for the open source project or the corp supported projects,
right?
Parallelization being something companies like Cypress charge for, that's obviously a lot
Is subsidized by
part of a large corporation, and so for smaller companies, that is their one path to getting funding and or supporting their staff. So definitely don't. That's right. Large companies are great, but they do subsidize a lot of really great things, and we all get to benefit. Obviously, as a community, but I just wanted to say that Cypress is game, right? So, and to be fair, I don't think you meant that. I'm just reiterating that myself.
super, I mean,
I'm amazed. I'm personally right. I think
it's always really
refreshing to hear about how really evolving where the community is, right? We now generally at this bar, and
so now
projects like Cypress, projects like, so edit that out. Projects like Playwright are kind of the bar even further, right? To kind of say,
Yeah.
started to understand
how important end-to-end tests are and browser tests are. Integration tests that are run via a browser, right? All those things are different, but all those things can be used by these same tools. And, now we kind of are collectively norming around certain things, and so we're collectively solving our problems, and further creating better and better abstractions. And so I feel like in that evolution,
and it's really it seems like at this point, maybe even best in class
in terms of certain user experience. Excited to check it out, and thank you
so much for
spending time with us today. I mean, Nick, wasn't this cool?
It was, and yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what you were saying, like, this is solving problems that maybe you didn't know that you had, like, and making things so much easier, because testing UI is hard, and we have great
Used
tools.
to be hard. Used to be hard.
Yeah. It gets easier with tools like this, exactly, because it really lets you test. It really lets you test in the environments that these are actually running in, and we've had like lots of ways to do that over the past, but like I've used Playwright, and this class of tooling just seems like the most stable by far, and like you get consistently good results from it. Like back in 10 years ago when I was trying to do this stuff, when these tests would fail, it was like, okay, did they actually fail, or was it just like the tooling, did that just like crap out? And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore with these tools, and so it's just so good to see this being pushed forward. And I hope that this and tools like it get lots of widespread adoption, because it is really the best way to test UI, because you're doing it in the place where the UI runs. So thank you for making this tool. And
yeah, well, I didn't make it, so I won't take all the credit. But
I bet you and your team. Yeah.
This is the royal you of
Exactly.
Team. Yeah, the royal you.
But yes, we have an amazing team behind it.
Yeah.
For sure.
And also the community, and I want to kind of say as well, Playwright is very community driven. We are open source. Yes, we are like Microsoft, but we are open source, which means that we rely on the community to file issues, tell us about problems that they're having, features that they're requesting, upvoting it, so that we know that this is what the community wants us to do. This is where we should kind of like put our efforts and stuff. And also like there's been a couple of people who've contributed as well, and helped us out, which has been great as well. So yeah, the community is everything to us, and the more people that become part of this community, the more amazing the tool is going to be. So I would say everyone come and be part of the community.
Yeah, that.
And star us on GitHub.
Right. So people who want to get involved about the project and learn about you, what are some good resources for them? And then also, are there any kind of online or any free videos, or like what's the best? Just get started and start learning.
Yeah, so playwright.dev is the website, and it's got the Get Started section, which will take you through writing your tests in 5 minutes. You'll have everything up and running. Then if you want to know more, there's a whole community page, and you can go there. It will tell you about, contributing. It will also give you videos, that release videos that I was talking about. There's a section of release videos. There's conference talks. If you want to just listen to me all day long, you could totally do that, talking about Playwright. So there's loads of kind of videos there. And then there's some live streams are in there as well. We will be building more kind of, upcoming, like not workshop, but like, small, learn how to do this kind of thing. That will be coming. So follow the YouTube channel for that. Follow Twitter. I know there's a bit of kind of going on these days, but yeah, follow Twitter for kind of any like new release information that's coming out, or LinkedIn. We're on there as well.
Release video, right? Watch the release.
Watch the release video.
There's
a new one coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a new one coming soon. So check that out. 2.8,
No,
2.8's
1.28,
coming.
2.8,
2.7 is
2.8.
out,
Oh my
and
God.
2.8's coming. So you gotta keep up with us.
I know.
And we'll have
Oh my
links
God.
to all this in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put links to
So
everything.
yeah.
Alright, Debbie, so
Last question for you before we wrap. If you could have one feature or way beyond that's Playwright related, like what would be your way?
I want it to generate the assertions for me so I don't have to manually change those clicks into assertions. So I want it to know that if it's a title, nobody's going to click on that title. So make it to be visible. If then I want it to be something else, I can edit that later. But that's kind of like almost 90% of the time I just want something to be visible on the page. And if it's not clickable, I want it to just automatically be visible. Yeah, that's my number one.
That's a solid number one.
I mean, yeah,
And that's also because it just went from you're like, oh, automated for me. No,
Yeah, make my life easier,
So,
right? I want to go do sports. I don't want to be sitting editing stuff.
Playwright for president.
President, you heard it here first, everybody.
Yeah.
Again, Debbie and Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on. We'll be back next week with stuff. I'm not going to spoil the surprise, so y'all just listen. But we've got a great show next week as well. So see you all, everyone. Take care.
It's been
Bye-bye.
fun. Bye.
Thank you.
Well, I got through recording a show in Mexico, so that's exciting. I feel like, yes.
Success, but
Oh my God, Debbie, thank you. Patience, and thank you for being so awesome. And like, we packed in a lot of really great information and great.
I'm sure the community's
I
gonna
love this show, and we'll probably give a shout
sure.
out in the intro to the person who requested this topic.
Although we
We're all like playwright for the past
I don't know how many weeks.
But
Yeah.
we did also have like a listener
who was like,
so we'll give that person a shout out. But this is awesome. I'm genuinely like, I think you converted me for what it's worth, and I've been using it since like early days.
No, because I think some of the key
Pain points that I think
Playwright
that
seems to have
focused on are the ones that like I'm at that where I have really good
Titles are
really
really
good.
I just want to step
Up my testing game to the next level, and it feels like some of the features that Playwright has, especially the tracing, that's huge. So now it's like, okay, if I play around with it, then it's this whole thing of how do I get my team to adopt it and get interested, which is going to be a different conversation. Because we have like thousands of tests, I feel like maybe that's the next thing for you all is to write like a code gen to like auto migrate people, but maybe that's
A lot of people have requested that. We always say use GitHub
Yeah.
Copilot. So if you put your Cypress tests in your project and you've got GitHub Copilot running, it kind of like reads the Cypress test and then kind of starts figuring out what you want to do. Then manually you'll have to do a couple of them, and then it'll start kind of going, I want it, and I know how to do it. And it's actually kind of cool how clever it can do it. So I would do that. That's what some teams have done. But can we build something? Possibly. Are we doing it right now? No. Will it happen? Maybe. But it's definitely. But then also it's kind of like, it's kind of sad, isn't it, if we build a tool that just kills Cypress because it makes you migrate very quickly.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, no, I don't think Cypress.
You're just requesting us to basically kill Cypress.
I know. I'm like, I don't think it's.
Whereas,
But I think this is gonna make Cypress step up.
Cypress have a great dashboard. They have a great dashboard. They should focus on that.
Yeah,
they
they
really do have a
great
Yeah.
dashboard. I 100% agree. But yeah,
Yeah.
like
I- but-
I've only worked at like 2 places that are willing to pay for it. Like, or sorry, one place that's willing to pay for it.
So,
Like
either don't want to
pay for it because it's too expensive, or they build something
in house. That makes sense.
like so.
Yeah.
But all right,
quick,
so
I'm
Debbie,
gonna-
I
I'm
think
gonna take us
Nick,
off
could you put a link in the
YouTube.
chat? Okay.